In today's episode, we're in conversation with registered dietitian Toby Amidor, who helps us define junk foods, addresses marketing's role in increased consumption of such foods, and explains the adverse effects that junk foods can have on weight and chronic diseases. Toby provides accessible alternatives and tips for avoiding and reducing junk food consumption, promoting mindful eating, and a supportive environment. Stay till the end as we have a giveaway in this episode. Toby Amidor is an award-winning registered dietitian and a Wall Street Journal best-selling cookbook author and has 9 published cookbooks. Her upcoming cookbook, Up Your Veggies, Flexitarian Recipes for the Whole Family, is due out October 2023. She is also the nutrition expert for foodnetwork.com and contributor to many media outlets. Welcome, Toby.
Thank you so much for having me.
Such a delight to have you on. So, Toby, diving in first, please share with us what inspired you to pursue a career as a registered dietitian and a nutrition consultant.
It's funny because my mom sat me down in college and was like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" So I took a couple of classes at the State University of New York in Binghamton, and they only had 2 classes. So I took biology of nutrition and sociology of nutrition, and I just loved it. Though I've never seen another sociology class of nutrition. That was my absolute favorite because it talked about like the history of how you could tell famine by their bones and periods of, it was fascinating of what people ate. It was fascinating, but I loved it so much that I then applied to do my master's at NYU. So I got my master's. My mom and I actually were there at the same time and we graduated together. And then my career kind of fell in line step by step, from teaching then to doing a lot of media, to writing cookbooks, and to doing a lot of spokesperson work.
Mm-hmm. And that's interesting. And, for our podcast episode here today, we're going to actually dive a little deeper into junk food. Mm-hmm. Would love to get your take on, just first personally, if you can talk a little bit about junk food and why has that been when we say junk food, obviously in the word itself, we're assuming quite a bit. Can you give us first a definition of junk food? Is there a definition that is not like...
Yeah, to me a junk food is, and there is room for it, is just a food that doesn't provide a lot of nutrition into your diet. To me, that is junk food. And whether it's sweet, whether it's savory, there are many different types of junk food. You have like popcorn and chocolates, and just if you eat too much of these foods, they tend to just rack up the calories quickly, rack up the saturated fat quickly, which we know is linked to heart disease. Added sugar, which we are limited. The recommendation is no more than 10% of total calories within the diet. Which is about on a 2,000 calorie diet, 200 calories, which isn't that much. And so it can lead to obesity and other sort of, chronic diseases that we're worried about and that we see so much in our society. So, to me, that is more of a junk food. And if you look at the dietary guidelines, there is room for it. It's not saying that you should have 0, because that black and white thought process isn't quite, like even from a psychological and a mental health standpoint, it's when you regulate yourself so much, it just does something like puts that aura of negativity. You can absolutely still enjoy these foods just within reasonable limits. You don't need the whole carton of Oreos. Believe me, I love Oreos. You just want to take a few cookies out and then have it together with, let's say, a glass of milk for the 13, nutrients that are found in a glass of milk. So you're pairing it with something a little bit more healthful there for a dessert or special treat.
Mm-hmm. Help us understand, Toby, why this is such a painful thing for a lot of Americans today. What is so appealing about junk food? Like, what is it
that keeps us... something I love. I have a sweet tooth like there's no tomorrow. A lot of it is mental health driven. Personally, I do have anxiety, and I know when my mood, and I think a lot of people can relate. Think about it. When you are at a birthday party and you're happy, what do you want to do? Have some cake. When you are upset, some people don't eat, but some people just go for that tub of ice cream or the donuts or something. And so the way, and anxiety too, somebody's anxious, which is like me, I'm like, okay, I'm hungry all the time. Like my body feels hungry, but it's not my body. It's a side effect of the anxiety. Depression can also have that effect. So your moods certainly regulate how you feel. And sometimes it's, you're trying so hard, you're like, but I need more snacks. So even learning how to pick a little bit better snack that is, a little bit more nutritious or a little bit fewer calories, or, sometimes I'm like, just chew on a piece of, like, the mouth wants something, chew on a piece of gum. So there are little tactics that you can do to help minimize it. Or if it is mental health, go see a mental health specialist, take care of the original problem. And then, if it's something with emotions, which a lot of us have, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, because of the pandemic. So, take care of that underlying issue, and then that can help resolve with the eating as well.
And I like that you talked about the mental health component. Help us understand, just really share with us when you notice sort of junk food become more prevalent in a person's life.
So when somebody can't, let's say they get a pint of ice cream or even a gallon, and they can't stop, and they're eating the whole thing until their stomach hurts. You don't need that many calories from that when you can't stop. Sometimes I'm like, okay, don't buy the ice cream, go to the store. At least you have to overcome that barrier of either walking to the store, taking a subway to the store, like taking a bus, taking a car. Then you really know you want it. So, sometimes creating for yourself some barriers like that certainly help.
And that sort of helps us, sort of creates that barrier to say, okay, there's one more step that I need to do to get there. It's not instant gratification and like instantly have access to it.
Right. And then another tip I like to say is, let's say it's the potato chips that get you, right? Don't take the whole bag with you to the sofa, because you're endlessly eating. You don't realize you're just putting it in your mouth, not even realizing it, not listening to your body's satiety signals. And so I suggest like portioning out whatever's good for you. If you want the 1 ounce serving, or if you want the 2 ounce, whatever, and then portioning it out. Because something like, by the way, popcorn is a whole grain. And if you look at something like a Smart Pop or one of those, air popped, you can have a couple cups for very few. Popped popcorn, like just on the air poppers, 30 calories a cup. If you wanted to, you can have 5 cups for 150 calories. Put a little salt or some seasoning on it, you're fine. And it's a whole grain. So it's really a matter of, balancing and taking your portion, and then sitting down and saying, okay, I'm enough, I'll finish it. Some people like to brush their teeth with that, flavor of the toothpaste. Some people like a hot cup of tea afterwards. You need to see what works for you.
How has, and when we talk about junk food, I think immediately we think about like that label and how delicious the product looks on the label, and how even just looking at the label can, like, even jog, like when you were talking about Oreos, like immediately you think about like the container and how it looks on the container, the packaging itself. Can you speak a little bit about how some marketing tactics perhaps that have like pretty much over the years impacted how junk food really has become so prevalent in the American household?
I mean, it has. If you look, there's a lot of foods there that just kind of push themselves into like your home when it, like you must have it, you're cool to have it. I mean, carrots tried very hard to make them look cool through some commercialization. I was really proud of those. Like, it was like the baby carrots. I was like, and you're seeing some of the more healthier options trying to do that sort of marketing, but it's almost like then you're like nostalgia too. Think of like stuff that maybe you grew up with that like you need to have because it just makes you feel good inside. And that's not, necessarily emotionally driven, like I'm anxious, I'm this and that, but like it just makes me feel good, like home. So, they definitely play on your buttons. I mean, there is regulation around commercialization with children, which a lot of companies do follow, but there are some, and it is to me lesser than it used to be, but you see influencers still pushing certain foods out there. My son, who's 21, asked me about, it was some like protein or energy drink or whatnot that somebody with millions of followers had, and he was so adamant about, and he's like, is this healthy? The guy had so many followers. And so I debunked it right away, and actually had one of my fellow RD friends, that's what she does on social, and she did me a favor, and she's like debunked it in his language for Gen Z.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Oh, thank you. That was really good. Now I understand why I'm not going to take it." But you see these things, and my son's a smart boy, and he's just a young man, and people are duped by what people, influencers say, what commercialization says. Today, I think it's even more influencers than the commercials that do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned something about children as well. To what extent, and you said it's obviously gotten a lot better, but to what extent do you think it is really a problem that junk food marketing is really aimed at children still?
Um, I mean, it's twofold too. It's certainly marketed. Again, it's a lot. The social media certainly has a lot of it. The parents, the buzz, because if you look at younger generations, they're not watching traditional television as much
Mm.
as we once did, like when I was a girl, maybe 30, 40 years ago. So they're using additional means in order to, commercialization. Like I said, again, there are some guidelines and laws surrounding certain types, like with cereal companies and with certain types of commercialization to younger kids. But
Mm.
it also has to do with educating the parents, and you want to make those healthy habits from a young age so the child develops these habits as they get older. You also don't want a kid running into their friend's house and being like, junk food, yes. My mom stinks. You need to you need to show a balance to the child, how
Yeah.
it can certainly fit. And that's, I mean, one of my kids, I have three kids, and when my kids were growing up, I have two girls who are teenagers. They like their junk food, but they're like, "Mom, you can't," like, if I buy something extra in the house, "Mom, stop buying the junk food. You're gonna eat it. Like, we don't want it." So it's very interesting to see the dynamic after raising them as a dietitian, and they're fully aware of healthy eating. But also they do have and like, we'll make cookies together. Our favorite is like this chocolate chip cookie recipe that's on
Mm.
the Food Network website, is one of my favorites. But we'll do it together. But they don't want to make one every night, and they're like, "Please make a healthy dinner. Don't make anything fried." Like, they're the ones guiding everything, and we actually cook together when we're all home together. So.
Nice. Nice. Love that. What is in junk food that makes it so bad for us? Or let me put it this way, what is not in junk food that really makes it so bad for us?
So right before I said what non-nutrient, or we call it empty calorie foods.
Right.
So, for example, a donut has high saturated fat linked to heart disease, high calories, high sugar. But then someone had asked me when I gave a talk at the middle school, they asked me, what is the difference between an orange with the sugar, natural sugar, as opposed to
Mm.
the donut with the added sugar? And that orange, yes, it's natural, but it also is coming with an array of nutrients, including vitamin C, asparagine, which is a phytonutrient found in oranges and orange juice. You get fiber, especially if you're going to eat the pith, a little bit of the outside. So, and it has other nutrients, but it's coming with a slew of good for you nutrients, and nature is adding that flavor of sugar to help as a means for consumption for our palates. So it's
Mm.
naturally, it was done that way. That's okay. But if you're taking the donut, there's nothing beneficial in there. Yeah, it might have enriched flour, so you're getting something. But overall, the nutritional content, if you look at a lot of these boxes, they just have calories, saturated fat, and added sugars, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of empty carbs without even fiber in it. So it's not the better choice on your plate for a regular basis. I like to say that because if you want one once in a while, go for it.
Mm-hmm. And so what you're saying is when we're saying empty calories, what we're really saying is getting your calories, but not getting any nutrient value
Correct.
alongside it. That's where we want to focus,
Right.
is that nutrient value
The
in
good
that.
for you nutrients, because saturated fat is a nutrient. Someone who's malnourished should be getting that, but
Yeah.
or they do want some, carbs in the form of sugar, and some, man, are not necessarily added. But yeah, you want good for you nutrients that we don't
Mm-hmm.
overconsume, because those are the ones that are pinpointed as being overconsumed by society as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of overconsumption, maybe this is a great follow-up question. Then, are there foods that wouldn't normally be considered junk food, but then have been labeled as that just because of like over processing and then overconsumption of that food as well?
So just the term overly processed has, I think, lost all meaning if you actually look at the scientific way that they categorize it, because tofu is one of the most processed foods.
Hmm.
However, I commonly recommend tofu, and soy is absolutely healthy. There's many myths that I've debunked over, my time in the media. But you have to look again at what this food is providing to you. The tofu provides a wonderful way for plant-based protein. If it's made with calcium, you get your calcium. It has some made with calcium carbonate. You get some calcium in there. You get a variety of nutrients in there. And so sometimes these terms are thrown out in society, and we don't really understand, if you look at the data, or if you look at the categorization, and their numerous categorizations and the way things fall. Like cereal is also considered very processed. However, it has a tremendous shelf life, right? For someone
Mm-hmm.
who is can't afford things, cereal is a wonderful thing that could be stored in your pantry. Research shows that with cereal, what do you have it? Most people have it with cow's milk, which has 13 essential nutrients, and fruit. That's three food
Mm-hmm.
groups, specifically a banana. So you have potassium in there too. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to look at the whole picture, and not just, people throw out these terms overly processed, or, listen, an apple in slices, they give them out or you can buy them on the store. That's processed too, because you're cutting it. So you have to.
Mm-hmm.
I've met someone that, it's funny, when I go to parties, I don't like to tell anyone I'm a dietitian, because then they're like, I don't need any processed food. So I'm like, okay, what did you have for breakfast? And they start telling me, I had a piece of
Yeah.
a whole grain bread. I'm like, well, the whole wheat plant, and the wheat plant didn't make the bread. Like, you didn't pick the bread, you had to process that.
Yeah.
Or I had some bacon. I didn't, you didn't, the cow didn't make the bacon like that. You had to process the cows, or the pig, sorry. So it's like, whatever you eat, it doesn't matter. It has the form usually is changed, or food safety aspects are put in there, like pasteurization of milk, for example, for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so there are overly processed that are certainly healthy, and there are, processed that are, maybe less processed, that are not so healthy, that don't give you so
Mm-hmm.
many nutrients
Mm-hmm.
in there.
So our best bet is to really understand what overprocessing of that specific food item is, and what nutritional benefits that food item still has even after the quote overprocessing.
Right. And then remember that we also have the enriching and the fortification process for a reason.
Mm.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
vitamin D, for example, is added to milk because vitamin D and calcium work together for strong, great bones. And then you also have, with the enrichment of all-purpose flour, like a white bread.
Mm-hmm.
The dietary guideline says at least 50% should be whole grain. You still can have some enriched product. That's okay. And we have it for a reason. Folate is, or folic acid is there specifically since we have the neural tube disorder and spina bifida found in pregnancy, and can result in some a fetus with spine and brain malfunction, and then they
Mm.
either die upon survival, or they're wheelchair bound. And it's very sad. So we were able to fix a lot of this problem with this fortification and enrichment process. The 1924 iodination of salt, when they put iodine in the salt, we were walking around with goiters, right? If you remember that Seinfeld episode, the lady with the goiter on there. I always mention, some people, if they're old enough, they remember. But we've eliminated most of that problem with that fortification process. We are seeing some iodine issues come up now, because
Mm.
it's found in milk, and it's also found in seafood. So people who don't take those, or the Himalayan, or like nouveau salts, aren't iodinized. And processed foods, quote unquote, they don't use iodinized salt usually, because it's more expensive.
Mm.
Yeah. So we are seeing a little bit of that coming and trickling in pregnancy population. We're seeing that as well, if they're not eating seafood, shellfish, or milk or dairy products, or using iodized salt.
Got it. Okay, that's how you're seeing it. Now, help us understand, coming back to the junk food piece for a second, what are the possible long-term effects of consuming junk food and what can it lead to? Just help us understand that. I think we understand it, but can you truly help us understand, like, where does it start with the lack of those nutrients and then taking us to what that can lead to?
Sure. So in terms of, okay, so you're having an extra 300 calories, let's say, from a donut, okay? One time, three times, five times, it's not really going to do much for you if you have that in a month, let's say. However, if this becomes habitual and you have two or three a day or one or two every few days, you start to accumulate more calories than your body needs. And as you age, you actually need fewer calories, a couple hundred fewer calories as you get older. So if you can continue to have that higher calorie limit, especially from these foods who are displacing maybe some of the more nutrient dense foods that your body needs, then you can gain weight over time. It's very likely to gain weight, especially with that type of diet. When you're eating, let's say you need 2,000 calories just for the general average, and you're eating 3,000 calories over time, yes, you will gain weight. With that weight gain comes an increased risk for cardiovascular disease. You might see your blood pressure go up. You might see, and that has to do with the increased weight. And just, genetic disposition, sedentary lifestyle, if somebody smokes. So there are many factors that play a role. So it's not so black and white. But food, we know, definitely plays a role to help minimize the risk of many of these chronic diseases. Same thing with cancer. They're linked to certain, obesity and having more calories are certainly linked to certain forms of cancer. And then obesity, we know, also puts you at risk for a slew of other issues. Just being heavy could put your bones at risk. Arthritis becomes an issue. Sleep apnea becomes an issue. Type 2 diabetes is a potential risk over there, especially with a family history is very, very strong. And so these problems will come on much quicker, 10, 15 years sooner, if not more. And you can postpone them, if not push them as far back as possible to your lifespan, if you watch your diet a little bit more closely. That, like I said, it doesn't mean don't ever have a donut. It's just saying you should be having that plate, that well-balanced plate, and then once, fit it into your diet as needed. So if you have that donut, I'm just trying to use the same example with the 350 calories, then maybe take out that bread that you were going to have on the side with the pasta that day. You got to remove something if you're going to put something in. So, you always have to look at it from that perspective.
And I like that, it's not all or none, right? It can be, give yourself that room to breathe. Don't be extremely strict. Do what you need to do there, but at the same time, know how do you replace those calories with something more, again, that is more nutrient dense for you at the end of the day.
Right.
So how can we take steps towards healthy eating? If someone is used to eating junk food or is part of their diet, what can they do today as they're listening to this episode, Toby, to really jumpstart their health journey?
So, if you want to be extreme, go and do a pantry makeover, but you do want to really planning your meals helps tremendously. It really, really does. So if you look at your plate, look at a plate, cut it in half. Half that plate should be fruits and vegetables. And this is a healthy individual without disease, any kind of diseases. So half the plate should be fruits and vegetables. A quarter of the plate should be protein, and a quarter of the plate should be carbs. Whether it's a potato, pasta, whole grains, brown rice, barley, whatever you choose to do, with a dairy on the side. Whether it's a yogurt for dessert or a snack, it's fine, or a glass of milk. So you want to look at your food in that manner, and pick out 3 choices that you're going to have. What's for breakfast? Okay, I know oatmeal's healthy. How can I cook the oatmeal? Let me put a little bit of fruit, maybe a tablespoon or 2 or nuts. That's my breakfast with a coffee. Next is lunch. I'm going to do a salad, which is half fruits and vegetables. Make sure you have a protein on there. So let's say a grilled chicken breast. And then you want the carbs. There you can have a slice of bread. If you want like a roll people like with their salad, or if you want croutons on there. And then dinner, let's say you're going to do a piece of fish, some rice and beans maybe on the side, and then some cauliflower. Okay, that's your 3 meals. And you're still hungry? That's no problem. That's where snacks come in. Snacks are mini meals. And so if you feel hungry or you go more than 4 to 5 hours between meals, then find yourself a snack. If, let's say, I love ice cream, like love it, and I just don't want a scoop or a half a cup is 200 plus calories. I just don't want it. I don't, I see
Mm.
my cholesterol going up. I'm almost 50. My cholesterol goes up when I have too much saturated fat, and my weight goes up. I know it. I see it. It's genetic. And so I've done a swap, and this is what I'm suggesting. Find swaps that work for you. So for me, I go for Yasos. Even if I have two, it's 80 calories times two, or some of the bars are 100. So I know I'm having 160 calories if I have two bars, and I love that coldness, and they do a really good job mimicking the flavor of ice cream, and it's serving size. So I know the popsicle, I'm not digging into the thing. So
Mm.
I know that works for me. Some people like cheese and crackers, does it for them because they like that savory. So you have about an ounce of cheese with a couple of crackers, 7, 8 crackers, maybe a pear with that if they're still hungry to get the sweetness. You still
Mm.
want something sweet, take a yogurt and put it in the single serve cups, put it in the freezer. It comes out like ice cream almost, so you can have
Mm.
that. Take the grapes or berries, freeze them. People like that frozen kind of, do it that way. And there are many other like hacks that you can do in this manner in order to, try to feel satisfied for whatever your craving is. And sometimes you want the real deal, and that's okay too. If somebody's birthday,
Mhm.
please have a piece of cake. Just don't have the whole cake. That's
Make it a little embarrassing at someone's birthday, but yeah, no, I see.
yeah.
I see your point. I also like, Toby, in what you're mentioning, what I really like here is to say that you can help with certain behaviors, still be able to get the same feeling like you do have a piece, having some ice cream with some of these substitutes that you're doing, or even just as simple as take some grapes and freeze them so you still get that cold because that's what you're used to getting behaviorally, but what you're really getting is all of this benefit from a fruit. Right, so you're
Exactly.
really doing those swaps, and what you can do is with some of those behaviors, you can sort of play with it and say, okay, this is what works for me. This satisfies the craving, but it's not that bad,
Right,
right?
right. And one other thing, like if it's too much to make all the changes at once, then start with one change. That's
Mm.
the behavioral method of any kind of like psychology, smoking cessation, food changes. I mean, because a habit really lasts once you do it 6 months minimum, and then you
Mm-hmm.
continue a lifetime. This isn't something, hey, I want to lose weight for the wedding. Let me start eating healthier.
Yeah.
It's something you want to sustain because it takes over time for you to lessen that calorie load to let your body, and then your body slowly is losing the weight. The rate of weight loss by the National Institute of Health that's safe for your body is 1 to 2 pounds a week. So in the beginning, sometimes like when people make massive changes, they'll lose like the first week or two. Okay, you lose some water weight or whatnot, but it really should be. I have a friend and I'm helping him with some weight loss techniques. In the beginning, he did lose quite a bit, like 5 or 6 pounds that first week and a half. And then I explained to him the rate of weight loss. He's like, no, but I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's what you want. And everybody wants that quick fix, but for the body to be safe, to do this long term, to have no effects on your heart, because
Mm.
also it can lead to low blood pressure, and it's dangerous for your heart if you lose weight too quickly too. And you won't
Mm.
sustain it. You'll be too hungry and then just, eat more what you're used to and gain the weight right back. And that's what
You're getting
happens
it
to
back.
folks.
Yep, absolutely. Well, on that note, Toby, this has been such an insightful episode. Can you tell our listeners how they can connect with you and then just learn more about your work?
Sure. I have a website, so it's Toby with a Y, Toby, amidornutrition.com. My cookbooks are there. I have recipes. If you want to look at how to do indulgent a little bit healthier, I definitely have that. And then on all the social media outlets, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, it's Toby Amidor, or Facebook, it's Toby Amidor Nutrition.
Lovely. And can you also tell us about your new book that's coming out?
Sure, I'm so excited. So my 10th book is Up Your Veggies, and it really is, and it's flexitarian recipes for the whole family, because you can eat how you like to eat your protein, omnivorously or just, vegan or vegetarian based, but fitting in those vegetables everybody has an issue with. Most
Mm-hmm.
people, I think 9 out of 10 Americans is the stat, don't get their vegetables. So these are just really fun recipes or bowls to make whole meals to make sure you get your fill of vegetables.
Mm-hmm. Love it. And so folks can go, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to link up the link for the book on Amazon.com, so folks can click on the show notes, be able to go to the website with the book and pre-order it. on Amazon.com. So we'll link that up in the show notes below here for our listeners here, Toby. And last but not least, Toby, you also have a giveaway for us. It's like double, man. Can you tell us a little bit about the book that you're giving away, and then I'll talk about the contest rules.
Sure. Remind me which book.
So we're doing the diabetes cookbook.
The diabetes, okay, because I wasn't sure if it's that one or the one before. So yeah, I love that one. And by the way, I'm not a person with diabetes, though I do have people in my family that have it. But I still cook for me and my family with this book. So it's the Create Your Plate Diabetes Meal Prep Cookbook. It is based on the American Diabetes Association plate method, how to fill it for someone who does have diabetes, which can be used for a healthy individual as well. And it just has breakfast, lunch, and dinners, and about 150 recipes that you can create this plate with.
Love it. And so we will run that promotion on our social media channels. So for all of our listeners here today, what you would do is you would go to our Facebook, our Instagram, find this podcast post, and we're going to post a question over there. Go answer that question, like it, comment below to be entered into this giveaway. So again, Toby's doing a giveaway for the book, which is the Diabetes Cookbook. Head over to Facebook, Instagram, comment below this podcast post on our social media, and be entered for the giveaway. And Toby will send you this cool book with a bunch of diabetes-friendly recipes. Toby, it was such a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much again.